Weirdest shit seen? Number 1. In Florida Medical School, I completed a rotation in forensic pathology. Was employed there one day when they brought in an elderly man who had been discovered in his apartment after roughly a week with no air conditioning in the thick of the heat, so he had decomposed pretty quickly. The bacteria inside of you consumes the tissue as corpses degrade and releases gas, which is why bodies often appear bloated. So I wasn't shocked to see it when they opened the body bag. His scrotum was nearly the size of a football, which surprised me, no exaggeration. It appears that the same bacterial process led to this. They grabbed a large diameter needle and inserted it into the scrotum to allow the gas to escape because I was acting eager and I believe they liked me. Then, as the gas was escaping from the scrotum, they lighted the needle's tip with a lighter so that it burnt like a blowtorch. Approximately 20 seconds long. They defended the method by claiming that it reduces the scent in the lab. Talk about getting to experience things that almost anyone else has. The blowtorch for the scrotum. Number 2. Similar to a tale my father had told me. In the past, paramedics were also sent to dead bodies in case they weren't quite dead but had suffered catastrophic injuries. I'm not sure if this is still the case. Dad was sent to a scene where a man, who was 400 pounds or more, died on the toilet after a heart attack. When he arrived at the building, he was informed that one of the apartments on the third floor was emitting a foul odor. He and his partner are led inside by the police after they bust down the door. Dad had witnessed similar incidents with elderly people, so when his new partner started to unlock the restroom, he called at the man to stop, but it was already too late. When the guy opened the lavatory door, a wave of decrepitude and crap shot in his direction. Both he and the officer seated next to him puked without any hesitation. Dad was never a squeamish person, so it didn't affect him, it just smelled like a dead, obese guy. However, the other guys had to put on hazmat masks in order to tolerate being in the room. The body wasn't in a tear-in-half state because it had only been decomposing for about a week, but when the coroner arrived at the morgue, he discovered that it had ruptured and was spewing death everywhere. In his own car, he passed out. Dad called a friend, who rounded up all the new guys from work, and instructed them to only bring their hazmat masks because they were going on a training exercise. He instructed them to leave the masks in the car when they arrived and to return later to retrieve them. In essence, he sent them in one at a time, and the majority of them emerged with vomit on their clothes, lips, faces, etc. It's his best hazing prank, he says. Number 3. Although a dear friend of mine works as a coroner, this may not be related. She gathers the corpses. Anyway, she told me this tale of an elderly, 400-pound woman who died in her home. She had few friends or family, it was winter, and her body was uncovered for 2 weeks. On a couch that was immediately over a heater, she passed away. She instantly split in half as they tried to relocate her. Number 4. I heard a similar story from a criminalist acquaintance of mine. A woman was discovered dead by her husband in a flat, hidden beneath the bathtub. Father informed his children that mom had left to go on vacation and would return soon when they began to inquire about where their mother was. This continued for a few weeks without anyone noticing until one day a neighbor next door called the police. The entire hall smelled like a cesspool. The body practically flew through the floor and down the ceiling of the apartment right below, the cops discovered. Number 5. Currently a board-certified fellow in pathology, not in forensics though. 80 autopsies in which I took part. Strangest/scariest incident, house fire, one body found after more than an hour of burning. Completely charbroiled, stiff, and with limbs tucked in close to the body before dissection, we radiographed the head, abdomen, and chest to check for any suspicious objects. There are metal pieces in the chest. Execute the autopsy. In spite of the considerable heat damage to the epidermis and soft tissue, the internal organs are largely unharmed. This is not unexpected, I learn. The chest has a sizable, greater than 1 liter, hematoma. In both the anterior left lateral wall and the posterior wall of the right ventricle, there is a 2 cm jagged aperture. Metal shards were found inside the left lung. A passage through the posterior thorax with a potential entrance wound in the upper back is discovered when working backwards from the heart. Oh no, was he shot? Detectives show up at the mortuary. Say they have the landlord or roommate in their possession. They are currently questioning him. He has a firearm. He's been having a lot of loud arguments with the deceased man/tenant, which the neighbors have seen and reported to the police. He denies knowing anything about it and has no idea what happened to his residence or the deceased man because he was not home when the fire broke out. When we tell the detectives he's been shot and it's clearly a homicide, they give each other high fives. We learn later, after the homeowner has been thoroughly questioned, that he confesses to shooting the roommate while he is sleeping and then setting fire to his own home to try to cover the evidence. He killed his roommate because he wouldn't leave even though he was actually his tenant. Very spooky. Number 6. I frequently followed a medical examiner, but the strangest thing I have witnessed kind of haunts me even now. There was a woman who passed away unexpectedly and had numerous bruises all over her body. Detectives and police officers surrounded us because they believed there may be domestic violence involved. She was psychotic, nevertheless, and was not taking any medication. She would severely beat herself during one of her episodes, causing all of these bruising and cuts. But she died in a bizarre manner. She beat herself so hard that these bruises turned into massive blood clots that escaped into the bloodstream. They ultimately entered her lungs, pulmonary embolism. When we opened up her lungs, all that was within were blood clots. They were also all on her legs. In essence, she beat herself so hard that she choked. It was really bizarre. Number 7. The University of Pennsylvania's medical school was where my grandmother's acquaintance was enrolled. She and her classmates were assigned to cadaver class, which made use of donated bodies. The friend of my grandma and her companion were given a corpse at the far end of the quite sizable classroom. When she took the covering off the cadaver they were given, she realized it was her aunt, who had passed away 2 weeks earlier. Yikes! Number 8. My father worked as a homicide investigator for many years. He has so many dead bodies. They were all gathered around a recently dead body that had just begun the rigor mortis process at one point. The body sat up all of a sudden. 5 mature men, all tough Texas good old boy cops, nearly peed their pants and fled the house yelling. The on-site medical examiner laughed heartily. Once, a woman's neighbors called to say they hadn't seen her in days, her car hadn't moved, and the mail was stacking up. So they went to investigate. When they arrived, they discovered that she had killed herself by hanging from the tall, vaulted ceiling of her living room. Her neck had already broken and her skin had stretched before anyone arrived. Her knees were on the ground, and her neck was about 5 feet long.